What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with NIO, Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening to the market thus far, and what you should be watching for as time progresses, what's going on with some big news involving NIO, and how things are looking moving forward. But before I begin the double this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit $500 into the account, you are guaranteed 20 free stocks. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 75 free stocks. This offer ends in just a couple of days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with NIO. NIO is down 7.69% for the day, getting a very aggressive sell-off. It sold off the way it did because we had some negative news. Some bad news came out from both the end of Rivian and also because of JP Morgan, which I will talk about in the next couple of minutes. But also, we did see SPY kind of sink a little bit at the very end. We did close green, but there is a risk of it coming down a little bit more before we see some kind of attempts to bounce, in my opinion. So I'll break down more information about this. Now, let's talk about what's happening with the economic calendar and such before I break down the charts. As a reminder, excuse me, for Monday, we have new home sales coming out. For Tuesday, we have the housing data, consumer confidence, and manufacturing numbers. For Wednesday, we have the GDP numbers coming out. Thursday, we have PCE inflationary data. And then Friday, we have the PMI reports and more manufacturing numbers. So lots of data is coming out starting on Tuesday. It's going to be a very data heavy week. So get ready for all of this. Now, as far as the market goes, we also have some earnings coming out. We have a big piece of earnings coming out on Monday, as we have Berkshire Hathaway announcing their earnings. Whatever happens could affect the whole market. So watch and see how it moves. Besides that, we have Domino's announcing earnings, Zoom, and just a few others. We have Lowe's and a lot of retail stores announcing their earnings as well. Not to mention AMC on Wednesday. Then we just have like Dell and a few others. So most earnings are kind of minor, with exceptions being like Dell and also Berkshire Hathaway. But we'll see how things go. Get ready for all of that. As far as NIO goes, we've seen a lot of negative headlines coming out, like this one right here saying, "Will NIO be a portfolio killer in March?" Well, honestly, guys, here's my view and my answer. Let's just see what happens after its earnings. We have earnings coming out for March 5th, 2024, and we'll see how this ends up looking. That's most likely going to be when they announce them, and whatever they announce will affect it big time. But for the time being, NIO is looking bearish. It's been crashing because of some bad news. JP Morgan has come out and they're soaring. They're souring on NIO, if anything, and this is some bad news thus far. JP Morgan dropped as the stock had to give NIO an underweight rating. They gave NIO this, and this is just really bad news. They dropped NIO as a result of that, and they also have cut their price target to $5 a share, downgrading NIO, saying it's going to underperform compared to the market. And they're saying this because they don't think that NIO is going to get profits very soon. They think that the EV market in China is very competitive and NIO is in a bad place. And they said some negative things about it. They also mentioned that their overall rating for NIO is going to continue to contract. They mentioned that the stock essentially has a lot to prove, and they're not too happy about their margins. So all this negative news came out from JP Morgan. They're continuing to say what they had to say, and NIO is continuing to sink as a result of that. So NIO dropped with 75 million in volume. We're seeing a high volume selling, which is a bad sign, and we're continuing to see short volume increasing at about 53%. NIO also, excuse me, now it has a downgrade rating from JP Morgan, and the price ratio is falling as NIO is losing strength. On top of this, don't forget that in terms of seasonality, February is not the strongest of months. So is March. Those are historically weak months for NIO, so we're not in a very good place right now. And we'll just have to see where this thing tries to base. So as far as NIO goes, I want to call out that this is looking bearish. It has been continuing to sink, and we're going to be watching to see how it reacts to about 5.25. On top of that, if we lose that $5 flat, it's going to be our next target. JP Morgan is also saying they expect NIO to come to 5. So it's not a good sign. We have a head and shoulders like structure that ended up playing out and still looks very bearish. Look for a retest of 5.5, see if it holds. If we lose it, another big move to the downside should be coming, and we could see this thing fall all the way down to much lower levels. So it's unfortunate, guys. I don't really like to say this, but NIO is looking bearish. It looks very weak, and it may continue to sink, especially because the daily is turning bearish. It's not what you want to hear, but unfortunately, we're getting these bad pieces of news. And we're also getting bad news for Tesla, as the Rivian CEO is saying that they could be expecting 0% growth for the year. There's a lot of fear about EVs, declining sales, not the best of things that people want to hear. And this is quite negative even for companies like NIO. So with all this bad news coming out, guys, I really hate to say it, but it's just not looking too good. We want to be very, very careful, and we'll see how things go moving forward. But NIO is looking bearish, so are other tickers out there. And I do anticipate more downside. We look very weak on the daily. Look for a retest of 5.5 and more downside, and we'll have to see how it goes. Now, it could save NIO might be earnings if they announce something big, but so far, not much is changing that. For SPY, the daily looks to me like it's going to drop a little bit more. It shows 506 to 505 to be tested, but we'll see if we could bounce off of that. I do think that it's going to retrace a little bit more, and we'll have to wait and see if we could get some kind of bounce. As far as Tesla goes, we look kind of weak on the daily, could come a little bit lower. We're going to be watching 190 and about 188. Tesla failed to get a meaningful bounce, so it might come a little bit lower before it tries to bounce later. There is still an uptrend being established, but it might come down first before it tries to do so. For Apple stock, this thing has a potential inverse head and shoulders like structure, but it could come down to retest our daily 200 EMA at 180. So it might test that first before it tries to bounce. Look for a little bit more downside, if anything. So it's looking a little bit weaker. So it could retest 180. QQQ is looking kind of bearish as well. It also has this giant gap on the daily, so be a little bit careful with that. I'm not saying it's going to fill that gap, but I could see it actually retesting 433 to 432. So I could see it declining a little bit more, and we'll see if we bounce or not. So look and see how it does. Might come down a bit, and then we'll see if it could hold support at 433 to 432. For Nvda, daily showed a nice push to about 825 before it came back down. We're going to be looking to see how well it holds around 782, then about 775 below that. So we'll see if we could hold that in bounce or not. But I do anticipate a little bit more of a decline. The market started off on a strong note, but now it's starting to slow down just a bit. So expect a little pullback. That does not mean we're going to crash. We could just drop a little bit more before we attempt to bounce. So that being said, the market may contribute to NIO selling off, JP Morgan, and all these other factors. So I wouldn't be surprised if NIO comes all the way down towards, we retest 5.5, then end up testing 5.25 and just continue to sink from there. I'm sorry, guys, but it's the truth. I just want to be open-minded and honest. For the EV sector, the short term is not looking too good. There's all this bad news and declining sales for them because of the high interest rates and other factors like that. But for the long term, I'm still a big bull in the EV market. I think we're going to be fine. Give it the time it needs, and they're going to be okay. EVs are very price sensitive to high interest rates. It's still affecting them. So don't let this get the best of you. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you for listening, and peace out.